The day it began, the sky was pale, like it hadn't made up its mind whether to rain or not. I remember that detail more vividly than I should, maybe because everything else that came after felt like it unraveled in slow motion, starting from that uncertain sky. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what I saw, what I felt, and what I did. She told me she had a conference in Charlotte. 3 days. Her company had just merged with a bigger firm, so these little out-of-town trips had become more frequent. I wasn't suspicious, not yet. I dropped her off at the airport. She didn't kiss me goodbye, said she was in a rush to check in. That wasn't unusual either. But what caught my attention, what hooked into my brain like a rusted nail, was her suitcase. It wasn't hers. It was new. A sleek black roller with red trim, tags still fresh, like it had never been used. I had gotten her luggage for her birthday 2 years ago, navy blue with silver clasps. She said it made her feel classy. That one was still in our closet. I saw it that morning. Why the new one? I asked her. She blinked too fast too many times, then said she'd needed something smaller for the overhead compartments. That lie passed through me like a whisper at first, but it lingered. I got home and fed the dog, washed the dishes, opened a beer, normal stuff, tried to go about my day. But I couldn't stop thinking about the suitcase. So I did something I'd never done in our entire relationship. I checked the drawer she kept her receipts in. She's one of those people who saves every single one. Groceries, gas, candles. She files them by month in these dumb little envelopes. I pulled out April's and went through it. There was no receipt for that suitcase. I kept going. March, February, nothing. Either she'd paid in cash or someone else bought it. Or maybe she'd bought it online. I opened her laptop, sat at the kitchen table, logged in using her password, which I knew because we trusted each other. There was no trace of a suitcase purchase in her browsing history. No travel searches.
No hotel confirmations.
The Charlotte conference should have been mentioned somewhere. But it was like that trip only existed in the sentences she'd said to me, not in reality. Still, I didn't let it take root in my chest just yet. I told myself she might have used her work laptop, or that the suitcase was a gift from a coworker. I told myself anything to avoid the truth that was starting to bloom like mold behind drywall. Then I got a message. It was from an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in years. He was living in Asheville now. Said he saw someone who looked like my wife having dinner with a guy in a little bistro called Violet and Sage. Candlelight. No work badges. No other coworkers. I texted back immediately, "Last night." He replied, "Tonight. Just now, actually." I stared at the message for a long time. A bistro. Dinner. With someone. Called her. Straight to voicemail. I waited. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. At that point, something inside me didn't snap. It stretched. Quietly. Like a rope pulled too tight, about to give. I didn't scream. Didn't curse. I just stood up, walked to our bedroom, opened her closet, and looked inside. Half her things were gone. The red dress I hated, gone. Her favorite boots, gone. A few jewelry boxes missing. A section of her makeup drawer emptied. All these gaps staring back at me like wounds. This wasn't a conference trip. She had left. She just hadn't told me yet. But it wasn't even the betrayal that stung most. It was the choreography. The way she'd planned it. The deception, polished and deliberate. She had rehearsed this like a play, and I hadn't even known I was on stage. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of our bed with the light off, phone in my hand, waiting for her to call. She never did. And when I checked our joint account at 4:03 a.m., I saw the first definitive nail in the coffin. $2,800 transferred to an unfamiliar name. The memo read, "For everything." She wasn't coming back. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have planned for, was that I wasn't going to just sit there and take it. I wasn't going to break down and beg. I wasn't even going to confront her like she expected. Because the game had just started. And I already had my next move in mind. I spent the next morning doing 2 things. Pretending I was okay, and preparing for war. I went to work like everything was normal. Nobody knew that while I sat in my cubicle typing up reports, my entire reality had cracked in half. I answered emails, smiled at my boss, took lunch at my usual time. But inside, there was a storm tightening, building, refining itself into something colder than rage. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to plead. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to document. I pulled out the old backup phone from the drawer of my desk, charged it, and started forwarding everything I could think of. Bank statements, emails, copies of texts. I even downloaded the latest phone bill and scanned for unfamiliar numbers. There were several. One kept showing up during late hours between 1 and 3 a.m. every few days for the last 2 months. I dialed it. No answer. No voicemail either. Just a dead line. But I saved it. I wasn't letting anything slide anymore. By noon, my friend from Asheville sent me another message. He said they left the restaurant around 10:30 p.m., walked down the street like a couple in a Hallmark movie, her head on his shoulder. He said he didn't take photos because he wasn't sure what was going on. I told him I didn't blame him, but what got me was what came next. He said the guy she was with drove a white BMW, 2023, plates from Tennessee. I froze. I had seen that car before, in our neighborhood, twice, parked at the end of the cul-de-sac. Once in February, once in early March, just sitting there. I thought it was a visitor from the next block. Now I realized it had been her ride. Suddenly everything started to click. The random spa days, the late team dinners, the increasing distance, both emotional and physical, the missing dress, the new suitcase, the odd timing of her gym visits, and now, the out-of-state car that had been circling my life without me noticing. This wasn't just cheating. It was a double life. I got home before sunset, didn't even turn on the lights, sat in the dark with the dog at my feet. My heart was still, but not because I was calm. No, it was that eerie silence right before an explosion. My phone buzzed at 7:43 p.m., her name on the screen. I stared at it, let it ring twice. Then I answered. Her voice was bright, almost too bright. Hey, sorry I missed your call last night. We got so slammed, and then I passed out early. I said nothing. She kept talking. The conference is going great. Long hours, but productive. How's everything at home? I still said nothing. She paused. Hello. That's when I spoke. Tell me what he smells like. Silence. What? I said. I repeated. Tell me what he smells like. The guy from Violet and Sage. The one with the Tennessee plates. You've got your face in his chest so often, you must know. There was a long, cold stretch of silence. Then, a half-laugh. Disbelief. Are you spying on me?
No.
But I should have started months ago. Another pause. A shift in her tone. Like she was searching for the right role to play. You're being paranoid. That wasn't. You're lying. Don't talk to me like that. You've been living like that. Click. She hung up. I stared at the call log, then turned off my phone. Sat in the darkness again, letting the silence wrap around me. But now it wasn't confusion I felt. It was clarity. Like the fog had lifted, and I could finally see the edge of the battlefield. That night, I wrote her a letter. Not a love letter. Not a goodbye. A list. Every date, every charge, every lie. All lined up with timestamps and screenshots. I printed it out. Put it in an envelope.
No threats. No yelling.
Just the facts. And at the bottom, I wrote one sentence. I'm not the fool you thought I was. Then I dropped it in the mailbox. Let her read that during her conference. Let her sit with the silence now. 3 days passed without a word from her. I didn't text. I didn't call. I waited. I wanted her to come back to the house she used as a stage, walk through the door and feel the walls press in on her. I wanted her to taste the silence I'd been living in, the one she built with her secrets. And then she did. It was Sunday, 6:17 p.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table when I heard the garage door open. She walked in like nothing had changed, keys in hand, oversized sunglasses covering half her face, wearing that ridiculous Weekend Vibes hoodie she'd stolen from me years ago, like it still belonged to her. She looked around, hesitated. The house was too quiet.
No te ve.
No dog barking. No movement. Just me. Hey, she said cautiously, pulling off her sunglasses. Did you get my texts? I didn't respond. She tilted her head, smile fading just slightly. Okay. What's going on? You got the letter. That made her blink. Her eyes twitched for half a second, calculating how to play this. Yeah, I did. And I think we need to talk because... Then talk. The air shifted. I don't know what kind of assumptions you're making, she said slowly, but you've obviously been snooping around in things that are none of your business. I laughed. Actually laughed. You slept in another man's hotel room, used our joint account to fund your little weekend getaway, lied about a conference, emptied our closet, and now you're mad I looked at the phone bill? She dropped her bag on the floor. I left some clothes at a friend's. I didn't empty anything. Then go check, I said, standing up. Go ahead. Open the closet. Count your shoes. Count the hangers. Hell, check the perfume you took. I know the scent. He probably does too. She didn't move, just stared at me like I'd pulled the ground out from under her. Then finally she cracked. You want the truth? She snapped. Fine. I was going to tell you. I was waiting for the right time. I walked closer.
No.
You were waiting to see if it would fall apart. If he'd choose you. She flinched. Her mouth opened and closed like she couldn't decide which lie to grab first. Then, as if it hurt her to be honest, she said it. He makes me feel alive. You haven't done that in years. It hit harder than anything else she'd said. Not because it was true, but because it was what she believed. That's funny, I said, stepping back. Because you haven't been alive in years. You've been rehearsing. Smiling at dinner tables while texting someone else under the table. Oh, don't be dramatic, she said, rolling her eyes. She rolled her eyes. In the middle of our marriage burning down, she rolled her eyes like she was above it all. You don't get to rewrite this, I said. You walked out first. Don't expect applause when you try to stroll back in. Her face hardened. So what now? You want a divorce? You gonna play the victim for your friends and cry about it online? I didn't answer. I picked up a folder from the counter and handed it to her. Inside were copies of the financial transfers, the hotel reservation under the name she used to use in college, the phone logs, the missing hours from her work calendar. Everything. She flipped through it without a word. I'll send the real thing to your office Monday morning, I said. Unless you want to get ahead of it. You wouldn't. You really don't know me anymore, do you? She stared at the pages for a long time. Then slowly, deliberately, she tore them in half. Dropped them on the floor like trash. You're pathetic, she whispered. You really think this makes you the winner? I stepped past her, toward the door. There is no winner. Just one person who left, and one who finally stopped waiting. Then I opened the door and left her standing in the kitchen she used to own. She didn't leave that night. She stayed. Slept in the guest room.
No apology. No remorse.
Just a cold, calculated silence that seeped through the walls like mold. I didn't hear a single sound from her.
No crying.
No door closing. Just the occasional soft creak of the floorboards when she moved. Like she was still trying to keep her secrets intact. Even now. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the hours I'd spent trying to protect something that had already been poisoned. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen making coffee. She looked at me like I was an intruder in my own home. Her first words were, "So what's the plan?" "No, good morning."
No, I'm sorry.
Just a question. Cold and clean. "I already told you," I said. "Divorce. Papers are being drafted." She leaned against the counter. "You think I'm going to just walk away with nothing?" That's when I realized she wasn't broken about losing me. She was furious about losing the deal. The comfort. The life. The structure she had built around herself like armor, paid for with my loyalty. "This isn't a negotiation," I said. "You built your exit. Now walk through it." But instead of leaving, she sat down, crossed her legs, calm, collected. "You think this is new? You think he's the only one?" Something in my chest stuttered. "What did you just say?" She tilted her head, voice almost casual. "You think I waited this long? You think I didn't have backup plans? Contingencies?"
Is there here?
She smiled. Not the way someone smiles when they're proud, but the way someone smiles when they're finally holding the knife. "I've been planning this for a year," she said. "The conference was a decoy. He's not even the one I'm leaving with." And just like that, the narrative I'd pieced together, the dinners, the car, the fake meetings, crumbled. She wanted me to find the Asheville guy. She fed me that path like bait on a hook. The real betrayal hadn't even arrived yet. She pulled out her phone and tapped it twice. Showed me a photo. It was her. On a boat. With another man. Older. Clean-cut. wearing a white collared shirt and sunglasses. His hand was around her waist. His face was turned slightly toward her neck. "His name's Graham," she said. "He's not flashy. He's private. Safe. He's already filed for separation from his wife." My stomach twisted. This wasn't chaos, it was surgery. Precise. Practiced. "And what?" I asked. "You think this makes it better?" "No," she said softly. "It makes it easier." She stood, poured herself a glass of water. "You always wanted a reason to be the victim. Here it is. Use it. Tell your friends. Tell your parents. They always hated me anyway." I took one breath. Two. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I smiled. Because if she thought she'd won, if she believed this was the worst blow she could land, she was wrong. "I already sent everything to your company," I said. "HR, legal, every message, every bank trail. You weren't discreet, and he works for the same corporation." Her face twitched. "Just once." "And the Asheville guy?" I continued. "He's real. I traced him. His wife is a client at my firm. I told her yesterday." She cried for 10 minutes and then asked me for a lawyer. That smile vanished. I stepped toward her. Calm. Measured. "You burned everything to the ground and thought you'd walk through the smoke untouched. But this isn't smoke anymore. It's fire." She threw the water glass. It missed, shattered behind me. "I made you," she screamed. "You were nothing before me. And now I'm nothing because of you," I said. "Which makes us even." Her breathing was ragged now. The calm mask had cracked. The strategist was gone. All that was left was the mess she'd been hiding under layers of control. She turned. Walked out. I didn't follow. I walked over to the broken glass and swept it up. Every shard. Every piece. One by one. Quiet. Steady. And while I cleaned, I realized something simple but terrifying. She still wasn't finished. 2 days later, the letter arrived. It wasn't handwritten. It wasn't even from her. It came in a sterile, heavy cream envelope with her lawyer's name printed at the top in small, forgettable font. Inside were neatly clipped divorce intentions, counters to my proposal, a request for equitable distribution, and most offensive of all, a line about how she sacrificed her personal advancement to support the household. I read it at the kitchen table, the same spot where she once made me pancakes in her pajamas and laughed with her whole body. The letter sat there like a corpse between us. Equitable distribution? She hadn't sacrificed a damn thing. She was living 2 lives, pocketing pieces of both until one of them broke. And now she wanted a piece of mine. The next day, her lawyer emailed again. This time not about the finances, but about the house. She wanted to sell it, split the profit. Said she couldn't live in a space charged with emotional trauma. She hadn't lived here emotionally in over a year. What she really wanted was to erase the place she built her lies in. But I wasn't letting her take this house. Not because I cared about the bricks or the wood, but because it stood as the last artifact of my sanity. Of who I was before she carved pieces out of me and served them to someone else. And just when I thought her campaign couldn't get lower, she called my mother. At first, my mom didn't tell me what was said. Just said she'd gotten a strange call and asked if everything was okay, but I pressed. Eventually, she caved. "She said you were spiraling," my mother whispered. "That she was worried about your mental health." I nearly dropped the phone. "She said you were obsessive, angry, that you'd threatened to destroy her reputation, and that she didn't know what else to do but reach out to someone close to you. That wasn't a plea. That was a move." She was preemptively building her defense. If I made a public statement, if I sent those emails to more people, if I exposed the extent of the deception, she wanted to bury it under the narrative that I was unstable, vindictive, dangerous. She wanted to reframe herself not as a traitor, but a victim. That night, I went to the spare room where she'd slept. I hadn't touched it since she left, but now I searched it like a stranger in my own house. There, inside the bottom drawer, beneath a folded sweater I'd never seen before, was a phone, a burner, fully charged. I turned it on. What I found wasn't just messages. It was plans. Full exchanges about how she was tired of playing wife, how she couldn't wait to be free, how she deserved a softer life, with someone who understood her value. And then screenshots of me, my texts, my messages to friends, cropped and reworded to seem erratic. Screenshots of my bank activity with red circles around dates she knew I spent money on her, but claimed were impulsive splurges meant to manipulate her. There was even a draft email addressed to HR, accusing me of emotional manipulation and financial control. It wasn't just betrayal. It was preparation. She had been plotting the fall before I even knew we were on a cliff. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid awake thinking of all the men who'd been blindsided like this, who'd walked into courtrooms thinking they were going to explain themselves, only to be told they were the villain in a story they didn't write. I couldn't let her control the ending, so I copied everything. The burner, the texts, the timestamps, every word she'd weaponized. Then I wrote a statement. Not to the internet, not to her family, to mine. I sent it to my siblings, my parents, a few mutual friends. Not angry, not bitter, just factual. A timeline, a quiet unraveling of her narrative, like peeling back wallpaper to show the mold underneath. And then I went silent, because silence, I realized, terrifies people like her. By Friday morning, her silence broke. But not the way I expected. I was at work, halfway through a client call, when my phone started vibrating like it was trying to crawl off the desk. For missed calls, all from her number, then one from an unfamiliar number, then another from her again. I ignored them all. The fifth voicemail she left was short, breathless. I need to talk to you. It's about him. Please, call me. I didn't. An hour later, her attorney sent a sudden revision to the financial agreement, dropped her request for alimony, lowered her asset claim. No mention of the house.
No explanation.
Just retreat. It was panic, not strategy. And that meant something had happened. Later that day, I got a call from a friend who worked in HR at her company, the same friend I had looped in when I first sent the documentation. He sounded cautious, careful with his words. She's been pulled into internal review, he said. Turns out there's more than one incident. What do you mean, more than one? She was using her travel reimbursements for personal expenses. And someone else, a different department, filed a complaint about her behavior on a trip last month. With that guy, Graham. She's not fired, he said. Yet, but it's not looking good. And just like that, her structure began to creak. She had built this whole plan like an architect, reinforced with lies, calculated with distance. But she forgot one thing. When you start a fire, you don't get to control what it burns down. That night, she showed up at the house. Didn't knock. Just stood on the porch like she was expecting the door to open on its own. I didn't move. I let her stand there. For 5 minutes. Then 10. Eventually, she rang the bell. I opened it just a crack. She looked nothing like she had a week ago. Her hair was unbrushed. Her makeup smeared from tears or haste. I couldn't tell. Her voice came out thin, cracking under its own weight. Can we talk? I didn't open the door wider. I didn't invite her in. About what? I think I made a mistake. That sentence. That pathetic, predictable, hollow little sentence. You think, I said. I thought he was someone else, she said. He told me he'd leave her. He told me. This isn't about him. She paused. What? This was never about him, I said. You left me long before he ever showed up. I watched something flicker behind her eyes, a realization she hadn't wanted to face. I lost everything, she said. My job's about to go. He cut off contact. He won't answer. And I can't. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. Still, I didn't open the door. You came here, I said. Not because you regret what you did. You came because there's nowhere else left. Her silence told me I was right. Then she tried the last card in her hand, the one she'd always kept for emergencies. Can we just go back? She whispered. We were good once. Maybe we could try. I'll go to counseling. I'll explain everything. That's when I opened the door. Fully. So she could see the packed boxes behind me. Furniture dismantled.
All spare.
Closet emptied. I sold the house this morning, I said. Closings in 30 days. I'm moving to Seattle. Got a job offer 2 weeks ago. I accepted it yesterday. Her face fell. You're leaving. No, I said. I left the moment you picked him. And with that, I stepped back and shut the door. I didn't hear her cry. I I didn't hear her knock again. I didn't even check the window to see if she was still there. Because in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. Not from her, but from the version of myself that had once believed I needed to earn loyalty by giving away pieces of my soul. That version was gone. And now I was finally, fully, done. A week later, the story cracked wide open. And not because I said anything. It was her. She made the mistake. In trying to salvage what was left of her image, she triggered the final collapse. It started with a post. Some carefully written, suspiciously neutral paragraph on her social media feed. Sometimes people grow apart. Sometimes things happen behind the scenes that others don't understand. I'm focusing on healing. Please respect my privacy. No mention of betrayal.
No accountability.
Just a vague cloud of things happened to soften the landing. But people aren't stupid. Especially not his wife. Yes, Graham's wife. Turns out she wasn't nearly as passive or blind as Amanda thought. Because 2 hours after that post went up, she commented. Publicly. Under her real name. Healing is easier when you stop sleeping with other people's husbands. It exploded. In under 24 hours, there were over 200 comments. Friends. Co-workers. People from college. It spread like gasoline over dry grass. Old acquaintances started piecing together timelines. Someone even reposted Amanda's fake conference selfie next to the marina photo I'd found in the burner phone. Same weekend. Same outfit. And the silence? The silence from her job, her friends, even her new man? Deafening. The man who was leaving his wife for her had not only ghosted. He had blocked her across every platform. I know this because she emailed me. A long, rambling apology that wasn't really an apology. She told me how everything collapsed at once. How she felt trapped by the lie. How she just wanted someone to see her. She still didn't understand. This was never about her being seen. It was about her erasing anyone who really saw her. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my lawyer. He added it to the growing list of communications we were archiving in case she decided to stir the pot during the settlement. She hadn't filed anything official since we sent the counterclaim. I had leverage now. She had reputation damage. Corporate exposure. No backup plan. But I had something even better, quiet support. One by one, the people who mattered most came to me. My brother called. Said he never liked how she'd smile with her mouth. But not her eyes. My best friend took me out for drinks and told me about the time she'd slipped and called me safe instead of strong. Even my mother, who had doubted her instincts at the beginning, sent me a handwritten note. You are worth more than what she gave you. And you always were. There was one more twist before it all ended. Her company let her go. Not for the affair. Not officially. It was a restructuring. But I knew better. Too many eyes. Too many whispers. HR had the files. The story was radioactive and she was the core. She tried applying at a competitor. I know because I got a reference call. Legally, I couldn't say much, but I didn't have to. All I said was, you should look into the travel records. She's very creative with expenses. The woman on the phone paused. Duly noted. And that was that. It's a strange thing watching someone unravel, not with fire, but with absence. She lost the narrative. Lost the control. And worst of all, she lost the illusion that she could always land on her feet. She reached out again last week. No apologies this time. Just, I'm struggling. Please, can we just talk as friends? I blocked the number. Because healing doesn't mean giving the fire another match. The courtroom wasn't dramatic.
No shouting. No gabeles lammin.
No impassioned declarations like you see in movies. Just paperwork, tired expressions, and two people sitting on opposite sides of a sterile oak bench, pretending they hadn't once shared a bed, a mortgage, and 1,000 tiny mornings together. She showed up in black, polished, composed, and soulless. A final performance. She didn't look at me until the judge asked the standard questions. Then her gaze flicked toward me like she was checking if I'd break. I didn't. I had already broken. But not here. Not now. That happened months ago, in the silence of a kitchen where she smiled with a mouth full of lies. The hearing took 37 minutes.
No alimony.
No shared property. No kids. Just financial division, which leaned heavily in my favor thanks to the burner phone, the receipts, and her sudden exit from her job. The judge took one look at the documents and said, "It appears the petitioner has acted in bad faith," then signed off on my proposal without objection. She didn't even flinch, as if she'd trained herself not to. Outside, it rained. Of course it did. She stood under the awning, phone in hand, texting someone with her thumb moving in sharp, efficient strokes. She didn't look up until I passed her. And then one final line. "Do you feel better now?" I stopped, just for a breath. Not because I wanted to engage, but because the question was so absurd, so shallow, it deserved a proper burial. "No," I said, "but I feel finished." And I meant it. I walked away, for the first time not dragging pieces of myself behind me. A week later, the envelope arrived. No return address.
No handwriting.
Just a note inside, typed and unsigned. I thought love was supposed to forgive everything. You made me realize it has limits. You win. It wasn't apology. It wasn't even guilt. It was admission. Small, bitter, like the last breath of a collapsing ego. She thought this was a game. Thought keeping score would save her from consequence. But she didn't understand. I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to survive. I tucked the note away, not to keep it, but to remind myself that silence has power. That stepping back can be louder than a scream. That walking away isn't weakness. It's strategy. I finalized my move to Seattle the next day. Apartment keys in hand, new desk, new routine. Different skyline. Lighter heart. The first morning I woke up in that city, I didn't check my phone for fallout. I made coffee, watched the rain, and for the first time in over a year, I breathed like I owned my lungs again. It's strange how quiet freedom is. You expect some kind of noise, fireworks, screaming catharsis, maybe even that stupid dramatic music they use in redemption arcs on TV. But no, freedom is still, clean, hollow in a way that doesn't ache, but hums. I've been in Seattle for 3 months now.
No dramatic reinvention.
I didn't shave my head or run a marathon. I didn't write a book about the pain or adopt a new identity. I just started over. Small things. Learned how to cook something besides scrambled eggs. Took a photography class. Joined a gym where no one knows my name. Every now and then I think of her. Not with longing. Not even with anger anymore. Just observation. Like a bad dream you remember when the light hits the window a certain way. I wonder if she regrets it. Not the betrayal, but how sloppily she tried to manage its consequences. I wonder if she's still rewriting the story to cast herself as the one who had to escape. I wonder if she ever realized I wasn't the prison. I was the foundation she cracked to plant poison. But what I've learned is this. Betrayal doesn't begin when they touch someone else. It begins when they stop choosing you. When your laughter becomes background noise. When they look past you while smiling. When they stop checking if the door is locked because they assume you'll do it. And you will. Until one day you won't. If you're reading this because you feel something's off, because the silences are getting longer and the lies more practiced, trust yourself. Not every doubt is paranoia. Sometimes it's your gut doing the screaming your heart's too loyal to acknowledge. Here's what I'd tell you, if you were me a year ago. Get proof. Not revenge. Proof. Truth has gravity when lies start flying. Don't confront until you're calm. Let them unravel while you stay steady. Protect your mind. They'll try to rewrite the story. Stay grounded in your reality. Tell your people. Don't isolate. Shame thrives in silence. Exposure kills it. Walk away with dignity. Don't match their chaos. Let your exit be your statement. My ex? She doesn't get to be the villain in this story. She's just the lesson. The real villain was the version of me that thought love meant sacrificing self-respect. I buried him in that courtroom. Now, I'm building something new, with fewer expectations but clearer eyes. I won't say I'm healed. That word feels too complete. But I'm healing, and that's more honest. And if this story found you at a time when your world feels like it's cracking under the weight of someone else's betrayal, let me leave you with this. There's one last move after the betrayal. Divorce, silence, consequences, and then peace. That's the real win.